Good morning, Mr. Beasley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, honorable members.
Good morning, Chair.
Oh, okay, I am audible.
Morning, Chair.
Yes, you're very audible.
Okay, thank you so much. And good morning, colleagues from Parliament, as well as from the committee, that is. And good morning to members of the Special Investigating Unit team. And also
Recording in progress.
The Auditor General. Today, we are going to receive a briefing from the SIU about its investigations into the UIF, Unemployment Insurance Fund, TERS scheme. So I'm not going to delay things any further. I don't know if Advocate Mothibi is here. I haven't seen his name on the screen, or somebody else doing the presentation.
Good morning, Chair. Let me check Advocate Mothibi. I think he's busy trying to log in. Yes, I'm sure he would like to do the introductory remarks before we start. But let me.
Yeah,
check.
that's what I thought. Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Is Advocate Mothibi with us now? Yes.
Good morning, Chair. I've managed to join. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much for joining us. So I had already introduced the discussion for the day, which is an update on your investigations into the Unemployment Fund's TERS scheme.
Yes.
So I'll hand over to you to do the introductions.
No, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable members, I apologize for the technical issues we had for me to join a few minutes late. Honorable Chair, we appreciate the opportunity to brief the Honorable Committee on our investigations into the Unemployment Insurance Fund. I'm joined today by Mr. Lekgetho, who's the Chief Operations Officer, and by Mr. Sibe, who's the Acting Chief National Investigations Officer. I'm also joined by Advocate Vanara, who's the Chief Legal Counsel, and the Chief Stakeholder Relations and Communications, Mr. Khanyago. We are ready to start. Mr. Sibe will be doing the presentation. Honorable Chair, without wasting more time, there will be an opportunity to comment either as the presentation proceeds or at the end in terms of some of the observations we have. Thank you. Mr. Sibe, over to you. Thank you. Mr. Sibe, are you able to proceed, please?
Colleagues, do we have a problem?
Honorable Chair, it looks like Mr. Sibe is still in the so-called waiting room. I've asked Mr. Lekgetho to proceed.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
hand over to her once she comes in, just to save time.
All right,
Thank
cool.
you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Lekgetho, please
Yes,
proceed.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just want to find out if the presentation is visible.
No, it's a black screen at the moment. It was visible earlier.
Okay. Is it
It's visible now. It's visible
Okay.
now. But
No,
just make it bigger, a little bigger.
Is it better, Chair?
Okay, let's continue. The members have the presentation, so it's not that I can see it.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair, for let me pass the greeting to the Honorable Chair, honorable members, and the colleagues online. We are going to present on the investigation in the Department of Employment and Labor in relation to UIF tests. In terms of the table of content, what we're going to present is two matters. There is two proclamations. The first one is relating to the proclamation R23 of 2020. The second one is the R8 of 2021. The first one, R23, it's a proclamation that look at the entire procurement which was done under the state of disaster. And thereafter, the R8 was issued specifically to look at the UIF issues. Then we'll deal with the observation, systemic recommendation, and we'll come to conclusion. As indicated, the presentation contained two parts, that's R23 and R8. And the R23 is finalized, then the R8 is still ongoing. In terms of the first one, which is the R23, the investigation is based on the allegation of maladministration during the procurement of the media buying issued and purchase order, rendering the service for the appointment in respect of the UIF by Motswako Media, MSG, Media Max United, and ESAT TV, and payments made thereof.
Sorry, Mr. Lekgetho, can I ask? So I'm advised that you need to switch the display to presentation view. Did you try that? So that the people who are watching the stream can see. So that's from the streaming team.
Okay. Maybe let me stop
So
to share, then
on
share.
at the bottom, I think it's supposed to go to presentation view. So you have to go out and then you have to, and then try again. Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Sibe has arrived, then she'll carry on from here. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, HLU, colleagues. Apologies, Chair, I had technical issues to join. I've been waiting in the lobby. As Mr. Lekgetho, Chair, has already indicated, our presentation today covers two proclamations. This is R23 and R8 of 2021. The first one, the current screen then depicts then the R23 matters, the matter that we investigated under R23. Chairperson, I'm pleased to inform the committee that this investigation is complete. It was just an investigation against 5 companies that were appointed by the department under sole provider as a sole service provider, which was actually misleading in the circumstances. I'm trying to move the slides. Okay. All right. This was misleading in the sense that there was a submission by one of the officials indicating that the services by these 5 entities was a special service that only these entities would then be providing, which was not true, Chair, as you would appreciate that in the media space there are many other media houses who could provide media services. So the actual work that needed to be done, it was mainly to run radio advertising campaigns during COVID-19 period. I will then move, Chair, to the slide number 8 in terms of then the summary of outcomes. Chair, as indicated, this investigation is complete. We have made our findings in terms of then the misconduct, and we referred these matters to the department. We investigated also ICASA, Chair, just to ensure that to check the pricing, to check if these entities were really providing services that were really specific to them. And that was then refuted by ICASA. So in terms of the pricing, ICASA confirmed that the prices were below the standard, and therefore then the 6.1 million that was paid to the companies, we were only it was found to be irregular. However, the services were provided and the entities then were paid. Then in terms of the DCs, these are the officials that then were referred for disciplinary process, and these are the outcomes of the DC in terms of that investigation. So the first one, which was then these are just the levels of then is the assistant director, deputy director, deputy director SCM, deputy director marketing and communication, then deputy director ICT. These were all members of the bid adjudication committee at the time. So, and then they made up until number 8, then they made recommendations to the UIF commissioner at the time, who also approved then the recommendation. Then they were then given those sanctions, all of them. It was written warnings, the written warnings and final written warnings, and then the last 3 with a month's salary that they had to forfeit. Then I'm moving to the next one, Chair, which is now R8 of 2021. In terms of this investigation, Chair, I'm also taking that the presentation has been read by the committee members. In terms of this investigation, Chair, we received allegations from the former minister of the department, and in relating to irregularities in the unemployment insurance fund. So we then developed then the matters. We also seconded a team to the department, and these matters, we were confident that they fell outside the scope of R23. And then based on then the secondment, we then referred our motivation to the president, and the proclamation R8 of 2021 was published. The items that we had to deal with, they are listed in this slide number 11, Chair. So in terms of this investigation, we had to deal with, firstly, with the AGSA exception report, which identified 26 key observations. And we also then extracted data from the UIF in relation to entities that submitted claims. And the data then that we as the SIU extracted revealed that UIF paid approximately 57.4 billion rand to at least 240,000 entities. So we then, the way that we dealt with this investigation, it was mainly a phased approach. We started with then the officials who benefited from the scheme, as well as then the SANDF members, deceased person, as well as inmates who also benefited. That was our phase one. Phase two, we then focused on the entities who claimed for and received tax payments, and the money that was claimed was not even paid to then the employees that they claimed for. We also received, Chair, ad hoc matters that came from different sources, including Corruption Watch, whistleblowers, as well as UIF. So then all these matters, then they fall into then this proclamation. Okay, in terms of then phase one, we looked at approximately 6,000 employees that were identified within 24 government departments. And then this we got assistance from the Department of Public Service and Administration. So in terms of these employees, they were spread across all 9 provinces. And then also we then looked at the information. Also, we also use our forensic data analysis to extract more information on the individuals. So, Chairperson, this table that is now displayed depicts now the number of employees per province and what the SIU has done. Chairperson, we have now finalized some of the matters that are in the column number 3, but you will note, Chair, that under National Department, we have not started with them because most of these matters, some of the provincial people that were investigated in the province, they fell also under national departments. So these are the total values of then the claims that the employees made for each province. Under then SANDF inmates and deceased individuals, then we also received about 164 matters, and then 80 of those matters have now been finalized. We also received allegations relating to 760 entities who claimed for SARS benefits. And these were in terms of then the audit, the AGSA exception reports, Chair. and we investigated these matters. And out of them, Chair, I'm pleased also to report that most of the work has been done. We have finalized at this stage about 545 matters, in terms of these entities that benefited. Then the next slide, Chair, depicts then the summary of outcomes in terms of this investigation. We had about 6,687 matters that we investigated. We have finalized 4,624, and we have referred 174 disciplinary referrals to the department, and 738 referrals were made to the NPA. We then made other referrals to AFU, Home Affairs, as well as SARS, and then the number is 23. We recovered a total of 229.4 million rand in terms of this investigation. Then, Chair, I'm moving to general observation. In terms of what we have identified as systemic issues within the department, we observed that the department did not do due diligence when administering the UIF TERS applications and payment. We also identified that there were inadequate skills to deal with UIF TERS applications. So the employees that were deployed to deal with this assignment, they didn't have the adequate skills. There was also fruitless and wasteful expenditure, as UIF also hired 12 auditing firms to conduct the very same investigations that we were conducting. There were also use of fraudulent identity documents by foreigners to claim UIF. There was also double dipping in terms of government employees who were working for government and getting paid, and then who also benefited from the scheme. The companies also submitted fraudulent claims for their employees, including ex-employees. Then, as part of our systemic recommendations, Chair, we have recommended to the department that at least they should try and invest in an integrated system that is linked to the Department of Home Affairs to verify those beneficiaries would be deceased, would be foreigners, and also who had duplicate identity numbers. Then also we recommended the annual update of employee and payroll database from their system. And then we also recommended that they should maybe invest in an updated IT systems that would be able to detect issues beforehand, especially in relation to those suspicious transactions. Then we also recommended the implementation of cross-departmental information sharing system that links all departments such as SARS, Home Affairs, and the Department of Employment and Labor. This recommendation, it's not only it will not be the sole responsibility of the department. We also recommend a system design that should be enhanced to prevent duplicate claims from being processed. In conclusion, then, Chairperson, from our side, we finalized all the matters that we received from Corruption Watch, and some of the matters that we investigated, they were in addition to the ones that we received from AG. And then the ad hoc matters that fell within the ambit of the proclamation, they are currently being investigated by different provinces. The investigation into 1,100 entities that claimed for TERS benefits with a potential recovery of 7.2 billion, it's now commencing. It has commenced. This is the data that we extracted by as the SIU to our FODAT division. The project is still ongoing. We expect that we will be able to complete the investigation by 31st December 2025. That brings us to the end of the presentation, Chair. I'll pause here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members, and thanks, my colleague, Mr. Kasibe. Honorable Chair, just on the systemic recommendations, this is obviously high. This is obviously high level. It's important to note that there will be next steps, and this is the part that we will pursue with the team that is responsible for the implementation of the systemic follow through on the systemic recommendations, such that we contact the department or the UIF, so that there could be a consolidated plan to implement the recommendations and are monitored, which will ultimately end up with a prevention plan. This should be the next steps. So, Chair, I want to just comment on, I think it's slide number 8, with the outcomes of the misconducts that were conducted against the employees at UIF, particularly under the R23 of 2020, which is during the COVID irregularities. Slide number 8. I don't know if you're able to call it up, my colleague, but I'm sure the honorable committee will see that all of those members against whom we found evidence of wrongdoing in awarding or in the procurement of this contract worth 6.1 million, that they were all given written warnings, final written warning, of course, some final written warning and a month's salary. Honorable Chair, it is my concern, or it was our concern at the time. It still is, which we raised with the DG at the time. I think it's the DG who has since left, and the commissioner was on suspension. No, that is obviously when he came back. After he was given written warning, we got feedback that he was going to come back. But of course, we raised it along relating to all of them. So the point really I'm making, and this is the point that the honorable committee members always makes, what do we do in instances where we are not happy with the outcomes of the disciplinary processes? In our view, these sanctions really do not fit sort of the seriousness of the offense, if I were to put it that way. So, what we've done, of course, is to follow up, and the DG has since left. But of course, what we should really consider, and this is the part that I've been engaging with my colleagues, that in law, really the only option that we have here is to review the disciplinary process outcomes, because these are outcomes of a disciplinary process, and the chair would have returned all these sanctions, which we really are unhappy about. And if this trend continues, of course, there will always be that question mark around the effectiveness of consequence management. So I'm really just stating it to the honorable committee that it's something that we are seized with, It's not only in UIF, there's other state institutions. In fact, in some institutions, they would go to an extent that they don't really agree with the recommendations to institute disciplinary hearing. And this is where, again, we'll have to engage with them and say, you know, this is the evidence. This is what we've found. You know, rather than you making a call by yourself, let this go through the process of disciplinary hearing, rather than, you know, stopping it at the stage where you as management are saying, no, we don't agree with the findings. There is a temptation of subjectivity there, you know, in instances where they would say, no, we don't agree with your findings. So what we are saying is subject it to objective legal process, so that it's the one that comes out with the outcomes. And if the outcomes are of this nature, then we must really still take it forward, in the sense that, you know, we believe that the sanctions do not meet the wrongdoing, and then we can see how the legal process will deal with it. We are really concerned about you know, the trend that we are seeing. Honorable Chair, I really wanted to make that comment. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Matibi, and thank you, Ms. Klasibe, as well. Can I just ask, I noticed that there is mention of inmates. Can you just explain that? How did inmates end up being part of the scheme? These are inmates in prison, I'm supposing.
Yes, Chair. I'm gonna hand over to Ms. Klasibe and Mr. Lekgetho. They could come in. This is in instances of the I think the TERS, which is the temporary relief system that was brought over. There was a process, and this goes to really the heart of the modus operandi on how people, you know, end up applying for these TERS. And the point we've made that, you know, that they couldn't be detected that they are inmates, you know. Ms. Klasibe and Mr. Lekgetho, possibly just to outline to the committee, please, how we detected this.
Thank you, HOU. Honorable Chair, we ran the data in terms of the IDs from that were used to claim these benefits from the UIF, and unfortunately, when we ran this, we realized that the people who were in actual fact, we ran it against the data that we have from Correctional Service, and we realized, Chairperson, that the people that were claiming were actually inside prison.
Honorable Chair, just to really add on, and this will really just be a general comment, it really appears that you know, when this TERS was announced, obviously everyone, those who submitted, they just really saw an opportunity and the vulnerability. And that's why in some instances, there are those who are employed by government, those who are on, I think we call them PERSAL, which is a system of government, PERSAL employees. Everyone would really have seen the vulnerability and the possibility that they could, you know, wrongly or even fraudulently claim. So, yeah, it's really just the unfortunate part that everyone saw it that way, and that we, shall I specifically say, UIF did not have, the system and possibly the capability at the time to detect, go through each and every transaction and determine whether this individual qualifies, for the claim. Now our team, at the onset of the investigation, of course, they ran data, as Mr. Sibe says. The data analytic that we ran immediately flagged, all of this, which is something that UIF should have done in the first instance. They would have detected it, similar to how our team detected it, and possibly stopped it at the time. So that's really the unfortunate part, but the capability on the part of UIF also was non-existent, or really was just probably negligence on their part as well. Thank you. I see Mr. Lekgetho, you want to add on?
Yes. No, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Advocate. Thank you, Honorable Chair. In addition to that, what we found in many instances is that some of the ID number which were used were stolen ID number by foreigners who claimed, and they used the ID for the people that were incarcerated. Because some of the people that we found that they were in jail and they did not claim for the test. So it means it's somebody who used the fraudulent ID number. They put their photo inside the ID and claimed to test. That means there's somebody that were using that ID number. And in other instances, you find that the companies that claims on behalf of their members. So they had database. You find that this person who is incarcerated once worked in that particular company. And now when the company was claiming for tests, they just submitted the entire database, even the people that were not working for those companies. So they submitted only to find that some of those people were in prison. So that's how the data managed to find that some of those people are in prison. So that's the finding from the investigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. That would be our response.
So thank you very much, Advocate Matibi. So I'm mindful of the fact that this meeting is streamed, and there might be members of the public who might not have background on the TERS scheme. So just correct me if I'm wrong. So during COVID, a lot of employers were facing the possibility of having to retrench workers. And in order to protect jobs at the time, the government had a regulation. I cannot remember if it was a statutory amendment or similar, but the government enabled or facilitated the possibility of accessing funds in the unemployment insurance fund through employers, so that those employers could pay their employees a certain stipend to sustain them, so that they do not have to retrench them. Was that the scheme? Or I'm happy to be corrected. I just want members of the public who are accessing the stream to have a sense of what we are talking about. So please forgive me.
No, Honorable Chair, you have stated it very accurately. This was a temporary relief scheme, or was it TERS? TERS,
temporary employment relief
temporary employment relief scheme. Yes. So it was one of the measures, as you correctly said, that were meant to mitigate the impacts, of COVID at the time. Amongst other measures, because this was, as the Honorable Chair and the committee would know, that we conducted a full-scale investigation into the COVID irregularities relating to procurement of personal protective equipment and so on. This area was one of those other areas which we investigated. And you're right, you're correct, Honorable Chair. As you articulated it. Thank you.
Thanks for getting me, Tibi. Then how did the fraudulent schemes generally work? Was it by adding people who were not part of those employers? Was a qualification criteria maybe that made some employers not eligible or people not eligible? It's my last question.
Before I come in, Mr. Lekgetho or Mr. Sibe, respond to the question, please. This is more around the modus operandi as the investigation would have uncovered, right? Mr. Lekgetho, you started alluding to the other forms of modus operandi where employers would use, information of people who they did not have in employment. Some would be incarcerated. The other modus operandi would be those who stole other people's IDs to claim. Are there any other forms of the modus operandi with which or upon which these people who claimed used? The other one is employees who were employed, like government employees using this opportunity to claim, and that's why we call it double dipping. That's another sort of modus operandi. We've got the National Defence Force employees who also claimed it's the same basis, where they would being employed but still claim. I just thought, let me articulate ahead of you coming in some of the methods that were used to claim, the modus operandi that was used, that the investigation team uncovered. Do you want to add more of other methods that were used by this claimant or fraudulent claimants to claim the TERS?
Thanks, Advocate. I think you have outlined all of them, but in the main, the claim was done by either companies where those people were working at. So in most instances, those companies will just submit a list to UIF, even of the people that have retired or the people that resigned many, many years ago, and to claim everything. So that's how the modus operandi was working. And in some instances, the dormant company, which were never done any work or anywhere else, people will go to a community and get a chief and say, can you collect all the people? We are looking for a job for the people. Then they hand over their ID number. Then they claim for those people at UIF and say, these are my employee, please pay me. And how did we find some of those? We found because some of those students, they were students. They apply for NSFAS, and NSFAS rejected them to say that, no, you have received the test. Now they came and complained to say, how did I receive a test? Because I'm not working and I want to go and study. So that's the kind of modus operandi where people were just gathering the names and submit to UIF. So I think the issue is from the UIF side where they could not verify some of those information from company. That's why during the investigation, when we did the data run, we found that some of them are government employee, and you might find that some of them are doing remunerative work outside their employment in government, and they did not declare. But because now they are working for this company, and this company was not working during tests, so the company claimed for them. And now that's where we come across and say, hang on, you are a government employee, you are not supposed to claim. And in other instances, some of them are temporary teachers, whereby if you are a temporary teacher, you get paid salary through contribution by, I think, school governing body. and I think the money goes via PESAL. So when we ran, we found that these people were government employees because they've got PESAL number. But upon investigation, we found some of them that indeed they were not a permanent teacher. And during that period, they were not paid by the school because they were not doing their work. So that's why the school claimed for them. So there's quite a range of different scenarios that we came across. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lekgetho. So, Honorable Chair, that would really be, amongst others, we could possibly document, the rest of the other modus operandi findings, and send them through. But I think we've really articulated how the investigation found that this irregularities and crimes were committed. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mr. Lekgetho wants to add something.
Yes, Chairperson, I'm sitting with Ms. Lekgetho in his
Oh,
office.
you're sitting together. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, you're definitely not a mister.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to add another scenario in the Eastern Cape that really played a big role in this investigation. It was a doctor who represented the taxi associations in the Eastern Cape and then ended up claiming for all the taxi drivers in the Eastern Cape, and that money really didn't go to the respective taxi drivers. The claims were in the process of getting the claims through. Drivers were indeed requested to submit their ID numbers and their ID copies. However, the money then, just because it would be paid directly to the employer, and the doctor was representing the employer, and then he misappropriated all the funds. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thanks very much. I wouldn't scam taxi drivers if I was a scammer, but people have different appetites. I wouldn't mess. I wouldn't mess with those. I wouldn't mess with those guys at all.
Yes.
I would stay away.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Can I ask the members if they've got any questions for? Yes. So Honorable Beasley first, and then Honorable Neil May.
Chair, thank you to the SIU for excellent, so just well done to them. I picked up Advocate Mtumbi's frustration that nobody was actually disciplined and was actually fired for the first proclamation. And when I was going through the stuff last night, it was a big note that I made. I was actually dumbfounded that nobody was actually dismissed. And I think it's a massive issue in government sector. There's no consequence management. There's no accountability. The AG keeps highlighting it. The SIU keep highlighting it. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. I think, first of all, the people doing the disciplinary hearings have got their own skeletons. And then secondly, there's intimidation. And so I'm just thinking if there's not time to have independent disciplinary hearing boards or something, because the corrupt people that are corrupt. And I'm dumbfounded that nobody was this. I mean, it defies all logic. To get a final written warning. So I do pick up the frustrations, and it's something that we definitely, as SCOPA, need to look into and address, because it just can't be business as usual. And then in terms of those 5 companies that were involved, were recommendations for them to be blacklisted, why not? And if so, have Treasury. And then in terms of the second proclamation, there were 6,000 employees who were double dipping, but only 174 disciplinary referrals have been made. So why only 174 and not 6,000? I would expect if a government official is double dipping, disciplinary processes should be held against them and they should be dismissed. And then of the 760 entities that have been involved in this criminal activity, have recommendations been made for them to be blacklisted? And also it just defies logic that
Sorry,
very quickly, but
Honorable,
also the SIU.
so, sorry, you got cut for a while. So you said it defies logic, and then you were cut.
Okay, it defies logic that the UIF didn't run a few systems before making out the payrolls. I think if they did, they could have saved a significant amount of money and a significant amount of pain. And then if the SIU can just explain what the SIU for DAD is, it sounds quite interesting what that is. If they can just expand on that, I haven't heard them speak about that before. And I think, Chair, a commonality that's running through a lot of these organizations is that the IT systems are just inadequate. And I think that's a big thing, is that the more that the systems remain inadequate, the more corruption and wastages are going to happen. And it's something that we need to look at too, is the various departments having modernized IT systems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Beasley. Honorable Neil May.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Advocate and your team, and good morning, colleagues. One of the areas that I was really interested in is and it has been answered, is the taxi drivers. I can't believe that they didn't get their money, because if you know the taxi industry, that doctor I don't think is around anymore, because they would definitely claim their money. Normally that would have been done with an association. So I'm interested to know which association or which doctor, and I couldn't remember if you said which province that was, where this doctor had claimed for taxi drivers and the association. The other area is the inmates. How would the foreigners obtain their IDs? Now, inmates would they admit to getting tourist money or not? Or I can't understand that suddenly that the IDs of these inmates, was it from one specific prison? Was it from various prisons, which then you could understand? I wanted to sort of home as to, was there a specific prison where this happened in? With regards to government employees, I think now is a great opportunity to check those officials that were double dipping, because and check their companies and declarations. This is at least one time one can now check across the board. One of the officials I happen to know who was caught with his fingers in tours from the Eastern Cape. And it was a bit of a shock for all of us to find that he was connected to this. My last question is SANDF. The level of there were 59 cases, of which 19 has been finalized. What ranks were these SANDF personnel? Were they just riflemen, corporals, sergeants, generals? Just a little bit of information, or did they also have companies and were double dipping and therefore applied through that way? Otherwise, I tend to agree with you with regards to the disciplinary hearing of the officials from UIF. I think we can that is where maybe one would look at how do we take it further with regards to making sure that proper consequential management is taken, and not just a slap on the hand and a 1 month salary, because, I don't think that is sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Khosana.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead, Honorable Khosana.
The issue of In fact, I was saying good morning to everyone. For Kate and the colleagues.
So,
The
sorry, Honorable Skosana, we cannot hear you. Can you perhaps move about a bit?
From so it's because it's my network. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, no, I think you've got a network problem.
Let me try to let somebody come in. Let me try to find
Maybe see if you cannot type the question. I will read it. If that helps at all. On the message box. Yeah, see, we can't hear it all.
Okay, no, it's fine. I'll type it. Okay, thank you.
If you can type it, or yeah, that would be helpful. I would read it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Atkinson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to ask a question of clarity. There are a great number of government employees, obviously, who are tied up with the fraudulent application of There were quite a number of employees, of government employees, that were tied up with fraudulent claims. Were these claims made on their behalf by people at the UIF, or did those government employees actually make those claims individually? Because I think the point I'm trying to get here is, where did the fraud lie? Did the fraud actually lie with the government employees asking for the money, or was it a scheme that was set up by certain people at the UIF who were basically using employees' names to claim the money, and that would not necessarily have gone to those employees but to them? And then certainly with prisoners as well. I think you implied there that that prisoners' IDs have been used by foreigners. So am I correct again, which would seem obvious, that the prisoners were unable to apply in their own right? So there's almost like a double level of fraud here. And I'd also want to lend my support to the fact that the very senior people in UIF, the commissioner and the senior people around them, should probably all lose their jobs because of this. Because I mean, it really is quite egregious when you consider the size of this fraud, and the fact is that if the senior people are unable to pick it up, then they really were asleep on the job, basically. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Atkinson. Then Honorable Esak, and then we'll go to answers.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, Chair, and colleagues, and Team SIU. Chair, a quick one. The slide 16 of the presentation has alluded to some 545 cases that seems to have been finalized. I'd like to just inquire, the other 215 that are outstanding, I mean, is that still in progress, or just some clarity on that slide 16? And then I just wanted to check in, Chair, that 200, or rather 12 auditing firms were hired by the UIF to conduct this very same investigation. Now, it's just, you know, whilst the SIU is investigating themselves, and that is known to everybody at that point in time, how is it possible that the commissioner of the UIF would sanction for another further 12 auditing firms to be investigating the same thing? I just don't seem to understand and comprehend this fruitless and irregular expenditure. Because the commissioner himself, if my memory serves me well, is still on precautionary suspension, and his case is still pending. And the last I heard is that he was due now to appear in March 2025. So I'm not sure, you know, exactly how this all happens, but you know, as my colleague has alluded to, something serious needs to be done here. I think starting from the top, because there seems to be a lot of rot starting from the top here. Those are my comments and my two questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Let me read Honorable Skosana's question, and that was why were the members of the bid adjudication committee not dismissed? I assume that's what the BAC is, and I'm supposing that would relate to the first case, to the first investigation. Over to you, Advocate Matibi and team.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Starting with Honorable Beasley, we are in agreement that the manner in which, or the outcomes of the disciplinary process, really to us do not demonstrate the effectiveness of consequence management. And the comment around the independence of the disciplinary process. Indeed, we agree that it really lends itself for consideration. And we'll probably single this out for engagement with the Department of Public Service and Administration, that is in the public service, and possibly as part of this overall mechanism in the presidency of monitoring the implementation and outcomes of recommendations, that this area should also be looked at in terms of the independence of the disciplinary process. Otherwise, there's a risk that we will possibly continue to see this kind of trend manifesting. Whether the companies were blacklisted, Mr. Lekgetho and Mr. Sibe, please make a note of this and come back and indicate whether the investigations referred these matters for blacklisting. Number two, similar to the question by Honorable Skosana on why the SCM, were there any referrals relating to the supply management SCM committee members? Please make note while I proceed. You'll come back to that. Honorable Neil May, the taxi drivers, and I'm glad my colleague raised this as part of one of the other, methods of claiming, where this doctor also just, made it his project to use the taxi drivers to claim. The province, as my colleague indicated, was in the Eastern Cape. My colleague, if Mr. Sibe, if there's any indication whether the doctor is still around and what became of him or her, please make a note and comment on that. The issue around the inmates, Honorable Neil May. Honestly, on how the foreigners obtained IDs, it was really for us, a big question, that they would be in prison and the ones outside would have their foreigners, would have their IDs. This cannot happen without collusion. Well, in instances where it happened without collusion, then they would have possibly obtained these IDs somewhere else irregularly. And that's the aspect, of criminality that we amongst others, I think, referred to the NPA and Hawks for further probing from a criminal investigation perspective. But my colleagues can also come in there. check the officials who are double dipping. Oh yes, we do agree that this is possibly the opportunity now as we really improve on the checks and the sort of the lifestyle audits of all this of the employees, and particularly these ones who were double dipping. You know, what was the scenario here? You know, did they own companies? Did they declare? And all of that, so that we clean it up appropriately. We will really look at that, and this is also a subject which we will again take up with the Public Service and Administration. So all of these items will really itemize to the Department of Public Service and Administration and report back to the Honorable Committee in terms of the next steps. Proper consequence management, I think we touched on this. Honorable Atkinson, employees, were this made in cahoots with the UIF employees? Yeah, most of the officials, I think there were referrals made, but my colleagues can come in there in terms of the extent to which the investigation revealed collusion. Right, and then the prisoners could not apply in their own right. Yes, I think this also goes back to how their IDs were obtained. And then Honorable Isaac, the issues on slide 16, the 215 cases in progress. I'd like my colleagues to comment on that. My last comment would be on the issue relating to the appointment of auditors to investigate matters that SIU is already investigating. For us, that is not acceptable, and these are instances where we are really saying, you know, the state institutions should really first and foremost really look at state agencies to investigate rather than go to private sector companies. We're not saying they shouldn't, but there is capability in state to do that. But in this case, really, now they would be expected to pay the private companies, the auditing firms, and then also pay SIU. That is if the investigation related to the same investigations. And in that case, they should know at their level that they can't do that. They cannot do that, in which case those would attract irregular expenditure, really. Okay. Yes, we are aware that the commissioner is still on suspension. He's on suspension on another alleged irregular contract, which we are also interested in. And the team is working on getting the information so that we could consider whether to, get a proclamation for that contract as well. Okay, Mr. Lekgetho and Mr. Sibe, please, I hope you made a note of, well, if I might have missed anything, but in particular, those points that I indicated to you. Please proceed.
Thank you, HOU. Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I will start with the question relating to the 5 companies that were not blacklisted, the media houses. Chairperson, as indicated in slide 7 of our presentation, the 5 media houses submitted their letters to the department indicating their sole mandates. There were specific sole mandates that they had. they had sole mandates on sell campaigns, airtime, and to negotiate some partnerships with on behalf of the radio station. So they did not have the sole mandate, to provide media services. So the department misread the letters and then misleaded then the BAC to say that they had then sole mandate in all media services. Hence, then we could not find any wrong in terms of then the entities that submitted their submissions for this bid. That is why we could not then fault them in the process, Chairperson. So there were no referrals for blacklisting in this instance. And then the other question that I want to address was then why only...
Sorry, Ms. Posibe, can I please interrupt if you don't mind, that on a point of clarity. So these companies had sole mandate to represent certain media organizations.
Yes.
Okay. But the officials misread them to say what? To be meaning what?
That they were the only sole service providers in the media space who could run with their campaigns.
Okay. And that then had the impact of, so what was the impact of that assumption?
That assumption then in the impact was that the tender was then regarded as a closed tender for only these entities, and then they were awarded the contract as then the sole providers in the media industry.
Okay, I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So I just want to understand, because something feels odd, right?
Yes.
And that is the entity that is doing the buying, and this in this instance would be government, okay? Either through GCIS or directly.
Yes.
The entity that's doing the buying makes a decision about what audience it wants to reach. And
yes,
that determination then determines which platforms you are going to choose. So if you're looking for young people, for instance, who are digitally savvy, you will say, we have to get to, social media and so on, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, etc., right? If you're looking for people in the Eastern Cape, you go to Umhlobo Wenene, Radio Algoa, CKI, etc., right? I am trying to understand what a tender would have been for, because the government entity is supposed to have a buyer who liaises with the people who do the selling, the sales teams in various, but there needs to be a media distribution strategy within the government entity. Just help me out of my ignorance. I haven't worked in government. So how would a tender work? Because I don't think radio stations and these kind of people tender, because it depends. If you want people in Limpopo, you kind of have to work with certain entities in Limpopo. Otherwise, you're not going to get there.
Yes, Chairperson. I think the service that they needed in this instance was an entity or entities that would run radio advertising campaigns. So they needed entities that would run these campaigns in order to create awareness about then their temporary employee relief scheme. So then these entities came and then they said, we do have sole mandates with these radio stations. We can then offer this service with this specific radio station to offer you the service that you require. So they did not indicate that they were in the industry, the media industry, they were the sole service providers. They then listed their own radio stations where they had their own arrangement and the sole mandate. And then this is what was then misunderstood. But the UIF at the time, the service that they wanted provided to them was the running of those campaigns, because TERS at the time, they wanted to give people the temporary relief scheme. So they wanted to then advertise it across the country. I hope.
Okay, so no, I get you. I don't get it from their side. But I'm not going to interrogate you. So I don't get it from their side, not you. I understand what you are saying. I am just not certain why they were doing it this way. And that's a question we need to pose of the UIF when they come to see us.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Yeah. Please continue, though. I interrupted you.
Thank you so much, Chair. So there was, Chairperson, a question around why 174 disciplinary referrals when we investigated about 6,600 employees. Chairperson, you would then appreciate that it was not government employees who were submitting their names. It were the entities, companies submitted their list of employees from their databases. And most of the government employees were not even aware that their names were submitted to them. And then most of them did not even benefit from this scheme. They were not even aware that their IDs. It would be a situation that I worked for this company maybe 16 years or 15 years ago, because my name is still on their database as a former employee, then they submitted the names. Then the fraud would have been from the entity side, not from the government. There were instances, these 174 that we've identified thus far, that where the government employees themselves would have been involved. Hence, then we referred the DC against those ones. There was also another question, Chair, on the FODAT, what it means. FODAT is the Forensic Data Analysis Division within the SIU. This is the division that take all the information and analyzes it for us. For instance, it will be then the comparing of databases from different departments to look at a conflict of interest, to look at, even in these instances, they assisted to check, the data from UIF against the data from correctional services to pick up all of these anomalies, the red flags in relation to then the inmates. And then there was another question around Dr. Mbebe. The Dr. Mbebe is not a medical doctor. She's a doctor. She's called doctor because she attained a PhD degree somewhere. What she did, Chair, I know that the head has already responded to this. What Dr. Mbebe did, he's very known and very close to the taxi industry and taxi association in the Eastern Cape. So he entered into some form of an agreement with the taxi associations in the Eastern Cape. And then the taxi association being then the employer in terms of then the taxi drivers. Remember, the only way that you could apply in the scheme was either by way you were to be an employer or you had to be a bargaining council. So then they then ceded some kind of rights, or maybe they signed a letter to give her the right to represent the taxi association. And then in terms of that agreement, she was charging 1,500 Rand per claim. And she then submitted claims for all the taxi associations and then the different offices of the taxi associations in the Eastern Cape, and then she received millions of rand, of which then she claimed 1.5 per claim, which means if then the driver was paid 8,000 for the few months, then she would then take her 1.5 and then the remainder paid to the taxi association. So this fee, in terms of the agreement that was signed between between her and the association, was what was called an admin fee. So this is what happened in this instance. And then I think I've addressed then the issue of the fraud between the government employees. The fraud would have been from the entity side who used government employees, the entity being the companies that submitted claims. With regard to the 12 audit firms that were hired, I will then invite my colleague, Mr. Mashudu, to come in and respond to that. And on slide 15, Chair, there was a question on slide 15 as to what is happening to the difference. As indicated, Chairperson, our investigation is still ongoing. There are provinces, as depicted, that are still busy with some of the investigation, and therefore, as soon as our matters are finalized, I think it was slide number 17, yes. So the difference between 545 and 760. So those matters are going to be finalized, and then they relate to the provinces that are still ongoing with the matters. And then I will hand over to Mr. Lekgeto for some of the questions. Thank you.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair. Just to add on the question regarding the SNDF member as to what rank were they, what we discovered that most of these SNDF members did not claim for TERS. Their ID was stolen, and we went to the base where they are based. So we found, because when they claimed there was an ID, and we could see that the picture in the ID that it was used to claim is not the same as the person that we went to visit at different bases of SNDF. So they were really, really not involved. It just, they happened that their ID were stolen by foreigners who used it. And most of them, we found them working in different companies, for example, working for SPAR, working for other company that claim. So that's how we managed to find about it. And we can confirm that most of the people that stole those ID were prosecuted, because we worked together with the SAPS in order to make sure that we open criminal case, particularly when we found that the ID was stolen. And in terms of the prisoners, I think the prisoner, the ID number which were stolen were for different prison. It was not necessary for a specific one. So that's why our finding analysis is that their ID might have been stolen. And in some instances, the company they used to work for submitted their ID when they were claiming, not being aware that the people were incarcerated. And in most instances, the people that they were claiming for, the money didn't go to them. Some of the company just kept the money. And in some instances, the company claimed, but they didn't pay the members. They told the member that it's lockdown, so you did not do any work. But mind you, that those companies, they did claim for those people. And in the other question regarding the DC, most of this DC that we have referred, they mostly relate to the people working in the health industry, like nurses. And so, because what happened is that some of them, we found that they are moonlighting after work, they are working for other private companies. And now they didn't even declare in some of those companies. For example, maybe they work during weekend and they didn't declare they are working those companies. And those companies claim, in a legal way, because they know that this person worked for us, and not knowing that the people were also working for government. That's how we come across them. Then we refer for disciplinary against them, because they did not declare in terms of their conflict of interest or declaration that they are doing remunerative work, maybe during weekend and all those things. But the rest of the people were mostly teachers, like I indicated that some of them are temporary teachers who were hired by SGBD, the school governing body, and of which they were paid. And during that time, the school were not paying for them. But as a result, then the principal or the school decided to claim for them. So that's the category that I wanted to indicate. But otherwise, I think we have covered most of the question that were asked. But also the issue of why the BAC member were not fired, I think it's something that advocate has indicated, and I think from our side, we have created a unit that is doing the follow-ups so that we can follow up in terms of our referrals. So this is one of the instances where we need to follow up to understand in terms of the DC, what was the outcome and why the outcome was a written warning. And if you are not happy, we have the opportunity to write to them that we are not happy and with regard to the outcome, so that we can able to take it further. So that's something that we have noted, and we'll do it as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chairperson, maybe can we
Yes.
then request Mr. Mashudu to address the issue of the audit?
Oh, yeah.
firm? Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, it doesn't look like
Mr.
Mr.
Mashudu?
Morning, Chair.
Masudi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. Yes.
Okay, Chair,
Okay.
Honorable Chair and honorable members, Mr. Mashudu Nechikweta is the lead investigator. Come in, Mr. Nechikweta.
Okay. Now, thank you, HOU and Chair. Chair, what happened here is that when our investigators were conducting investigation in terms of phase 2, which is follow the money investigations, they will then approach companies that submitted fraudulent claims or that continued to claim even after the operations resumes. Because in terms of the TERS claims MOA that was signed between the employer and UIF, immediately when the employer resumed with the operations fully, they were supposed to stop claiming from UIF. But several companies then continued to claim, and we then conducted investigation in order to recover the funds that were paid to those companies. So when the investigators contacted those companies and conducted meetings with them, we were then informed by those companies that there are certain audit firms that has already contacted them and that they are already in negotiations with them. We then contacted UIF in order to find out what is happening. They then informed us that sometimes in 2023, after SIU has been given the proclamation, they hired 12 audit firms to conduct preliminary investigations. But then we said, you have hired those companies in order for them to do the very same thing that SIU has been proclaimed to do. But they then argued differently to say that they've got the right to hire those companies to conduct preliminary investigation. Then after, they will then give us the report that they received from those companies. But for us, we are then saying that it is a wasteful expenditure, because whatever that those companies are doing has been proclaimed by R8 for SIU to conduct investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think from our side, we've responded to questions that have been raised.
Yes, indeed.
We can take more questions if there are any.
Yeah, I do have a couple of clarity-seeking questions. Is it possible that there were employers who were not certain whether they could claim or not? Because I hear some of the examples that you are saying. Someone has been hired by the SGB to help out in the school, and they're not part of the government payroll. And when this happened, then I would imagine that everybody's scrambling on what to do and they're trying to see if they can help. And then, they hear about this scheme and they apply. I mean, I've heard you mention instances that appear to be those. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, did you find instances where officials appeared to be struggling with knowing exactly how to apply the regulations in light of the example that I've just given? And whether you found instances where, the relief went to somebody who did not qualify for it, but perhaps there was no malice involved in it. I'm just trying to ascertain, because it kind of made me think when you're talking about school teachers and so on.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm going to ask my colleagues to come in for those which relate to, definite or specific investigation findings, whether there could be sort of good faith instances, if I were to put it like that, instances where officials would have struggled to apply the regulations, employers who probably could have struggled to claim, and so on. I'll just make a general comment, and the colleagues can come in on the specific findings here. Just generally, with the investigations under R23 of 2020 proclamation, which is to investigate the overall irregularities that were found during the COVID-19 period. Most of the findings with regard to the implementation of the regulations, we really found that the National Treasury issued out those regulations, and they in a way almost allowed a measure of emergency to be applied, but there were still requirements, in terms of those regulations that needed to be applied, and we found that the state institutions did not apply those requirements that were set up by National Treasury. I think they sort of just took it that it's an emergency. They didn't follow the regulations. They didn't follow the process, and we didn't get cogent explanations on why would they have done that. And without cogent explanations, and looking at the evidence that was found, is that most of them really used that opportunity to benefit irregularly, fraudulently, and in many instances corruptly. So that's the general finding. But I would like my colleagues to come back on this in this investigation, were there instances that the chair is asking about. Mr. Sibe or Mr. Lekgetho, please come in.
No, thank you, Advocate. Thanks, Honorable Chair. In our finding, when we engage most of the people, particularly on the example that I give of the school governing body, we have found that in most instances, the employer were not sure as to who and when can they claim for their employee. Because in some instances, we found that indeed, the school governing body was paying for these teachers. And as a result, they applied for tests so that they can top up. And they say, then we said, no, if the people were paid, then they were not supposed to. So it was like some took it as a top-up measure to the salary that they were giving to their employee. And in most instances, it was like an issue that everybody is allowed to claim and to gain money out of this, because some of the companies were not necessarily closed. They were operating, like the hospitals and others, they were allowed to operate. So it was for those companies who could not operate during COVID. But some of them just decided to claim because the money was available and everybody was claiming. So it was quite not clear for most of the employer that we have interview in terms of this. Then on your second question, what we found out of this regarding the officials, were they capacitated enough, we found that it was the issue of the system integration at most in terms of this, because as and when the people apply, they will just approve. There were no due diligence which was done so that they can find out whether is these people, are they employee to run this thing against PESAL, to run against the Department of Home Affairs to see whether are these people deceased or not. So it's that form of due diligence that was not conducted. And in most instances, because a lot of claims were coming in and they needed to process them within a short space of time. So that's what we found as mainly cost out of it, because if there were a process which were put in place so that they can verify or do due diligence to verify some of this claim will not have passed through to that level where they were paid. And also the data with the CIPC to see whether this company, are they dormant, are they working, and also with South African Revenue Services to see whether these people, are they paying tax and all those things. So it's just a system integration that could have been prepared before the whole process was embarked on. I think that's from our side, from our observation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, I ask all these questions because I mean, hindsight gives all of us 2020 vision. So firstly, I have absolutely no doubt that people took advantage of the system. Whenever there's money, that has to be, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, whether it is, you deal with personal injury claims in terms of the road accident fund, and then there's a medical legal claims. People are always trying to milk the state. I accept that as a given. What I'm saying is that because the other thing that had me thinking, and it kind of is beginning to make sense now, without explaining it on behalf of the UIF, is why the sanctions were such as they were, because I do have a specific question to ask. But the point I want to make is hindsight gives all of us 2020 vision. The period of COVID was when everything shut down. People were working from home. You couldn't go to a meeting and meet someone. People were trying to download Teams and Zoom and all of these things. Some had data, others didn't have data, and things needed to be done and that kind of thing. And there's usually also, when there's a new regulation, a period of a level of training so that people know exactly how it works, so that processes are realigned. And the unemployment insurance fund paying out claims in this way has just never been done before. It was a once-off, and I would imagine there actually was no system to do something like this, unless I'm mistaken. But the UIF gets paid to an individual who's claiming unemployment benefits because they've been retrenched or because they are on maternity leave and that kind of thing. This mass payout of people creates two problems in my view. One, all the opportunists go there because they know there's an opportunity to eat. However, what also happens is that in the absence of a system, you're going to get a lot of inefficiency and so on. And I'm trying to weigh, and this is the discussion we should have with the UIF when they come to us. I'm trying to weigh how much was which, right? Because both result in actual losses. That's the third thing. At the end of the day, whether money is stolen or is wrongly given in good faith, it's still lost. and we need to make sure that those kind of things do not happen. But that was just for my own understanding, Advocate Mothibi, because yeah, there were many instances where there was just no system to do something, and it just opened a floodgate of mistakes and corruption in equal measure.
No, indeed, Honorable Chair. Really, those are useful observations and insights. What this really should provide us with, as government, is an opportunity to draw learnings, so that in our disaster management space.
Yes.
We draw these learnings, so that we create a sense of readiness, an opportunity. If it's systems related, we say, what have we learned from this? As my colleagues are indicating, the integratedness of systems to be able to provide us with the checks and balances, to be able to check claims against, or validate, the validation of claims. We found that in this case, the officials did not have, that check and balances readily. Honorable Chair, as you correctly stated, there will be a human factor where we, of course, find that there was a deliberate, where there was misrepresentation, right?
No. Always.
So those are cases that must be dealt with appropriately and punished, and consequence management. We've got other investigations. One of them is still ongoing, because more often, as you correctly say, where there's money or opportunities to gain money, all of this, yes. We've got an investigation going on into what's called now July 21 unrest, right? The insurance claims, and this relates to I think the SASRIA, right? Although the investigation is still ongoing, I can already anticipate that there would be sort of findings in terms of that period. Why is it that claims were not validated appropriately and so on? So I'm just sketching it as a scenario. The findings will still come there. But on a bigger picture, as government, we need to draw learnings such that we incorporate them in our disaster management.
Yes, absolutely.
And how is it that, in a particular disaster, what are the training requirements? What are the systems requirements? And so on and so forth. Thank you for
In fact, TB, they should be preparing for the next pandemic now, because if the system was overwhelmed, opened up floodgates for fraud and mistakes and that kind of thing. One of the things that the committee, when the UIF comes, is actually to check, do you now have a system in place? Have you trained people? Yes. Have you got like a bomb squad that would deal with these matters in the event that there was a rapid lockdown? Have you closed the loopholes that have been identified? Otherwise, we can't throw our hands next time and say, oh, sorry, it was a pandemic, we were not ready. We now know pandemics happen, and they happen more often.
Indeed, Chair. With your permission, just the last comment. We will also assist in that space, as I said, that in terms of implementation of systemic recommendations, it's really geared towards that. So that we've learned this, we've found this, these were the control weaknesses, this is what was required. Can we build a plan with you so that, you implement that? Thank you.
No, thank you so much. That's absolutely the right thing to do. Let me just check the messages in case somebody has asked a question. The question has been answered. I don't see any more hands, honorable members, unless somebody is really motivated to ask. I don't see any. Advocate Mothibi, I am going to thank you once again for being here with us today. I also wish to thank your team for always serving Parliament and the South African people with these investigations. and the transparency that we get to enjoy with what is going on and what how far we have gone with the investigations, what is complete, what is not, what has been the consequence. It really helps us with holding these institutions and public servants and elected officials accountable in the course of our work. It's hugely invaluable. And I want to say that we probably hear this all the time, but please don't get tired of hearing it. We're really grateful for the work that you and your team do. And I also want to thank the honorable members. It's been a very long week. Honorable Skosana is battling flu, but he was still here. Today, I was flying with him yesterday. I didn't think he would make it, but he made it. Thank you very much for your commitment, sir, as well as the other members. So thank you. We will reconvene next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Recording stopped.